you today, Mr. Flemings?
I'm doing good. I can't complain. I got my run in this morning. I've already started talking to my team. So trying to stay healthy like during these unprecedented times for sure. So
Yes, yes. Well, first of all, welcome to the Thriving in Uncertainty Conversations. And for those who don't know Hajj, I'm going to give a quick overview, but really I want you to go into this. So Hajj Flemings is a CEO and founder of Brand Camp University, of Rebrand Cities. He's been working in cities across the US to tell the stories of entrepreneurs, to bridge that digital divide between selling in your shop on the corner and into the rest of the world. There's so many things that I could share about you, but why don't you give some more of the detail for our audience here?
All right. Well, thank you. First of all, I want to thank you just for this opportunity and this platform. I think it's much needed. And so I appreciate you having confidence in me to be able to do that. All right. So yeah. This gonna be a good time today for sure. So I am a former engineer. But I became a full-time entrepreneur, a pure entrepreneur, as I like to call it, in 2009. My job ended at Ford Motor Company. And I transitioned into what I'm doing today. So right now I run Rebrand Cities. Rebrand Cities is a global design initiative. We're working in 9 cities, 2 different countries. We work with cities and municipalities to be able to get small businesses that are offline, online, and to be able to tell their stories, and to make sure that there is equality in the stories that are told. Lots of times we have preconceived notions that, that the only great entrepreneurs are those that went to Stanford. I'm not gonna knock anyone, if they went to Stanford, who wear flip-flops or wear the hoodie, and so and there's a certain rite of passage, and those are amazing entrepreneurs, but they're also tremendous entrepreneurs in the Midwest, on the East Coast, down South. So having the chance to be able to tell those stories and to work with those entrepreneurs to be able to help them to become more sustainable and to bring and to be able to meet payroll for us is critically important.
Yes. So not only the stories, but also the money, because we tend to forget sometimes in this entrepreneurial journey, it's not just about the great idea, it's about the great idea and getting it to the marketplace. And what have you been finding since, so pandemic started, you were immersed in this work already. Pandemic started, what are some of the things that you noticed at the beginning of March and that have unfolded both for your own business and for the many that you support around the world through your organizations?
So the thing that I realized is that that entrepreneurs, like and we had this term in terms of eating your own dog food. And so part of that is that the same message that I knew that I was going to have to peddle to everybody else, I was going to have to walk that walk first. And so when the pandemic started, we had already started switching towards a virtual model probably about 3 months before, just because we needed, to be at a scale. And what I realized is that at first I would think this was going to be a short-term thing, like by the summer, we should be able to get on with life. And about 90% of what we do is me traveling to cities, and we work in amazing markets like Los Angeles, Miami, like just great places. And so I quickly realized that was gone for the year. And so then we had to think about, how do you help businesses to be able to reimagine what they do? First of all, so we had to try to get money to people, but then how do you help them to be able to now figure out what's next? And what we realized really, really quickly is that this message of the digital divide that we had kind of had been being ambassadors for and had been communicating became something that all of a sudden people were like, well, maybe we actually do need this,
Surprise!
So we realized that, yes, and so we realized that people were open to it. That was like one of the big points.
Yeah, it's funny. One of the things that I've noticed, because a lot of my work until very recently, meaning March, the beginning of the pandemic, was predictive. So this is what's coming. This is how you should prepare for it. And what I've been saying recently is that it shifts from that predictive idea to productive. So it's like exactly what you said right there, whatever you weren't paying attention to before, or what seemed like you could kind of push off or wait until next week or 2 months from now or 3 years, all of a sudden became the necessary driving thing.
it became critical. And one thing that I've always talked to entrepreneurs about is that you need predictable income, right? And then the pandemic happens, and all the predictable income that you plan for, and and we tried to plan very well in terms of having salary set for a certain period of time in terms of how we had prepared and saved money and things like that. But then there are things to where now, once things shift, you now have to like reimagine. And so I've been working on an ebook that I'll drop like later this month, and it's called Speedable, but it's also getting people to think about how do you reframe what it means to get something to the marketplace. And so this is a time where now we have everybody's attention, but also at the same time, most of us are like, man, if I watch another Zoom thing or I'm online, because now we're online even more. How do you balance that in terms, because now we're moving more virtual, right?
Yeah. And so how have, one of the things I'm really curious about is so much of your work is about storytelling and translating an experience into something that isn't solitary or siloed, and it weaves the fabric of an entire community, and it doesn't just put the business within the context of what they're buying and selling, but really within the broader context of what space are they occupying, or what's their role inside of a larger community. And I see as one of the major paradigm shifts as we move away from a world of or, where business is separate from community, public sector is separate from private sector. We move away from this world of or and into a world of and, where the barriers dissolve. And so there's even more opportunity for this richness. And so I wonder, because our audience for this particular conversation is fellow entrepreneurs who are going through these same kinds of challenges. And so as you think about storytelling, and as you think about positioning and the broader context, what would you say? What would you advise people to do, leadership teams to think about?
Yeah. So I think there's a lot to unpack in the world today. So now we have COVID-19, we have racial injustice, and I think identifying where you want to be at in the larger conversation. So where do I want to fit at as it relates back to popular culture, or how do I position myself in this space? I think this is a great time for people to reimagine how they see themselves, and I believe in being authentic. But I can give you a ton of examples of things that that aren't authentic and they make money. You know what I'm saying? So, you got to figure out kind of like where you want to kind of plant yourself. And then, I think people are looking, this is a time where I truly believe that authentic voices are really going to elevate, because the water level is changing. So if you think back to when Saturday Night Live did their stay at home version of, of their show, and we did a show, and I began to compare the shows, and I was like, well, once you get out of these big studios, and of course they had great intros, and things like that, I was like, it's not that big of a difference. It wasn't I wasn't blown away. And so I say that because I think it's a great time, because now you strip away all the other stuff that makes somebody look better, when now it's like, who really has the goods and who doesn't.
Yeah, and who really has the goods and who doesn't. And something that you said in there about authenticity leads me to a conversation about integrity. And if whatever message we're sharing out here to the world is not in line with what we're actually up to, it's very easy to discover that very quickly, and sort of the cracks in the structure or the foundation begin to show themselves a lot faster. And in the space of a constantly moving world, it can be challenging to say, to do what I do, not what I say.
Yeah. I mean, and I also think too now, great wealth has always been created during recessions and during the Depression, even from the making of a monopoly. And so the guy who created Monopoly, the original idea was a woman, and it was called the landlord's game. But we rarely talk about the young lady. I can't remember her name, but it was the woman who actually created the original foundational game. And I don't know, she might have made $500 in the end, and this guy became a millionaire. right? But then there's other stories of the Ubers of the world that came out, I believe, during our last bankruptcy, 2008, 2009 timeframe, I believe. And so what ends up happening is that this is a time where like we can be reflective and let's try to put something out into the universe. If it doesn't work, that's okay. You can pivot, but now is an opportunity, I believe.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Hajj. The what's available to us thanks to the technology, even though that will continue to actually be a disruptive force in all industries, really. But what's available to us is a global marketplace that never was before. And so it really is this great equalizing moment.
Yeah. And I'm seeing some people, so I'm gonna give like some examples. So in Detroit, there's a young lady who runs something called Peacock Detroit. It's a boutique, and she has amazing clothes. So when the pandemic hit,
So everybody check out Peacock.
yeah, I mean, it's amazing. I think it's peacockdetroit.com. And so people weren't going into the store. She created something called Sunday Stroll. And so they take pictures of people who are wearing their different clothes. And now it's starting to create opportunities for her to get sales. Well, Good Morning America, reference what she's doing during these times in terms of, during these unprecedented times. So I'm seeing that happen. There's a photographer in Detroit who runs something called Street Pass. And so he started doing porch photography. And so families will come out on their porch and he will shoot pictures of families, right? And so we know the tech companies are doing great because everybody needs webcams and all these other kind of things. There's another young lady from Detroit who was braiding hair and her salon wasn't open. So she started doing Zoom calls, teaching other African-American young ladies to braid hair, charging like $5, and the New York Times picks her up. So now can you take that media opportunity and then leverage that into something else, right?
Right.
So I'm seeing those kind of things happen.
Yeah, and that's and for me that's where because I really believe that where we focus our attention and energy is what tends to grow. And so in these moments of great disruption, there's a part of the story which is structures falling down and companies closing. Yesterday's New York Times headline that said something like "Dark days for small businesses return," and that's a part of the story, certainly. But there's another part of that story, which is what can be born out of a moment like the one that we're living in right now. And I like to say that disruption simply, it's opportunity that looks different from the things that we're used to. And a lot of the work, a lot of the language that I've seen you use in your work is about, what do you do with a resurgence? Or with a comeback. And so I'm curious because a lot of folks who are on this call and will listen, we've got people in this community from over 30 countries around the world. We're going to listen to this, feel like they're coming back, or they're certainly, have a corner to turn. So what would you say to them as they're thinking about how they communicate about themselves and even just a strategic take in general?
So I would say this. I would say we have to have the mindset that the world is not going to be what it was before.
Yeah.
So we're not going back to what we were. So if we're thinking, okay, in a few months, life will get back to normal, it's not going to get back to normal. It'll never be normal. You can call it an abnormal. You can call it a new normal. So we have to realize that we're not going back to what it was. And so also during these times, what are revenue streams? What are things that I can work on that even once we get post-COVID, whenever that is, that now I can even maintain these things, And so we're looking at people like Erykah Badu, who's doing bedroom concerts, or John Legend, who's doing like living room concerts. So imagine if they get 30,000 people to pay $5 and they don't have to leave their house. And I wasn't doing this before. What if I did this once a quarter? Because this is not going to stop people from coming and watching me live. It's like now they have an intimate chance. You don't have to be able to see me, and they might make an extra 150,000 a quarter. You times that by 4, and you start doing the math, and you're like, I never thought about that because I didn't have to, right? Yeah. So it's those kind of innovations that I'm really looking forward to seeing.
Yeah, it's so exciting. Tony Robbins put on a 7-day comeback tour or some 7-day comeback event. And essentially he pulled together, there are like 300,000 people around the world, and, a smaller group of that for, and like what they're calling Zoomzilla, as like Godzilla. But Zoom becomes all of a sudden several flat screens, and although you aren't physically in the same room, it suddenly starts to feel exactly like what you were saying. More intimate, more connected, because it's inside of your house, and there's opportunity to earn money there.
Yeah. And I think also too, we've even reimagined like our house. And so I redid my office. So I painted my office black. I added some lights
Great,
to
by
it.
the way.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And then, I'm getting, I got a standing desk so I can be like more, I guess like fit and, and trying to figure out, stuff like that. We bought a Peloton. So now our house has become a gym, a sanctuary. It's become a restaurant, an office. And so now thinking about how do we become more productive and create an environment in our house that allows us to be healthier as well. And we haven't talked about that, like in these times, like at first, like when the pandemic started, I wasn't eating as good as I needed to eat because like all the carryout stuff seemed like it was pizza and all the other kind of stuff. And so how do we maintain our health when the gym as we know it is not the same experience, And so thinking about maintaining our health as well is going to be critically important.
Yeah, I know that that's something that's been important for you and your journey. You've been on quite a journey with health. So since you opened up that part of the conversation, let's go there, because one of the something that you said, that people are hoping to go back to normal, or that pull for certainty, and the economic and the epidemiological data is telling us it's going to be 18, 24 months or longer that we're going to be in this open, close interim time. And so if you're going to prepare for a marathon, psychologically, physically, and, several months long, what are some of the health components that you've, and the strategy that you've pulled into your own life and business that have supported you?
So I've changed to plant-based, and so I found that my energy level is a lot higher, not eating animal products. And I'm not saying that I've never had a pizza after, what I'm saying. So I do like, what I'm saying, from time to time. So I guess you can call me a strict, but that's helped me trying to get into bed by like 10 o'clock. Like I love staying up late, and so trying to manage that aspect of it, integrating like running. I have a bike now, so I try to do things to where I can integrate those into my day. Or sometimes I'll go run and I'll just take the call from the run. Like I'll stop somewhere and I'll take a call, and I'm like, because like it's the day and age to where you can do that and it's okay, even if the camera's on sometimes, So I've tried to just make that a bigger part. But what I've also realized with our team is that now I have to be mindful of that too. So even on our Zoom calls, we have most of our meetings are now camera off, like for our actual team, just because you have to be like, always on when the camera's on, because there's a slight delay. And so somebody says something and then your expression might communicate something wrong, or if it's your boss and all kind of stuff like that. And then, so we're starting to think about things like that, trying to minimize the amount of time, because like there are days when I start out at 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning, and it's like 8 or 9 o'clock at night, and I've been like looking at a screen all day. And so like those things aren't as healthy. Or going in the backyard on the deck and working outside where there's fresh air, just trying to provide more of those kind of balanced things.
Yeah, I'm even breathing better when you say going outside for fresh air. I'm like, oh yeah, that sounds amazing. So we have a question.
Yeah. And I'll add too, like, so our media does somewhat of an injustice, because, so when you start looking at healthy lifestyle, it seems like it's very zip code dependent. So even if you look at the imagery, like I was watching something called Invisible Vegan. The African American like young lady who was just talking about how the role models of what we see in terms of being healthy are not as inclusive, right? And so lots of times we don't see ourselves in that space, or it's not attainable, or things like that. So you want to just kind of throw that in, but but that's definitely, to get the question for sure. So
Yeah, well, that's so important, and that's such a huge part of what you do with Rebrand
Yeah,
Cities, and
yeah,
it's ensuring that people can see themselves in all the places and spaces,
yes, yes.
entrepreneurship and leadership and health and wellness, and which is also why I love the projects that you are taking on in terms of health and wellness as well, and
The
your new book.
feelings are mutual. The feelings are mutual.
Yeah, see, it's so good. And all of this because of Detroit Homecoming. Whoever knew?
Yeah, yeah.
So we have a question here from Chris who asks that, or who says that you mentioned, Hajj, you mentioned getting a media mention and riding that wave. If we do get an opportunity like that, what are some of the ideas for riding the wave and growing business? Oh, that's a great question, Chris. Thanks so much for that.
That is a great question. So media opportunities and content, that you create has a very short shelf life, right? So it's going to air at a certain point in time. It's now up to you to take that and to be able to now leverage that as far as you can. So in terms of resharing, creating a good relationship with whoever the editor or the producer is, one thing about the media, when they call you, they're always on assignment. So it's not like I'm gonna get back to you, I'm doing something else. When they reach out, you have to respond immediately, because if you don't, they'll move on to somebody else, and you have to deliver. And when you deliver, and you have to make it easy for them. So is your stuff up to date on your website? Is it written in the third person? Is it like all the stuff that they need from a validation standpoint? Can they go find stuff and like, okay, now I don't have to worry about proving to my boss that this is a legitimate person or things like that. So I always try to do that. I make sure that I try to reshare it and repurpose the content, and then save those content, because sometimes that stuff doesn't exist forever online. So,
Right.
you know what I'm saying? You might have to turn it into PDF or whatever. So,
Yeah. So it sounds like there's an immediacy to it. So both on if you get an outreach, there's likely some preparation that you could do in order to support a journalist. So pre-verified facts or links to your website or that kind of thing.
yes. And then also too, I would always ask questions to see if they're going to share it on their platform. So even though it might be you like being on the news, are they going to share it from their Twitter platform or on Facebook or on IG, and then making sure that they tag you, because that's important. Because it's one thing to have it from your site, but it's even better if it's from the actual media site, right? And then when they find that you're willing to share and repurpose it, and if they get a lot of people talking about it, then it encourages them to say, well, maybe I should use it more, so.
Yeah, and so it also sounds to me like what you described is in some ways a preparatory kit. So
Yes,
before you get the call or before you start doing your own outreach for PR, you could pull something together to have it ready.
totally agree. So what I'd recommend is a good headshot. And I know, like, and once people get to my age, and I'm 48, you know what I'm saying? People want to have like shots that don't look like them. Like they want to look like they're in high school. The photo needs to look like you,
Yes.
And so, you know what I'm saying? Like you are what you are, right? But having that and having that readily available is important. It's key. It's key.
Yes. And so do you have any examples of how people, and you did mention some of the stuff that was picked up by national news, but other examples of how people have translated that kind of media exposure into sales? Because one of the pieces of feedback or questions that I've gotten from some people is, okay, great, I'm out here and people are knowing about me, but how do I walk that path from somebody knows about me and I have this great exposure to actual concrete money in the bank?
Yeah. So what I've done in the past is I'll take a partnership and I'll use that partnership so I could then get another partnership. So I'll get, like, when I first got started, we got I was doing a conference. I didn't have any sponsor that were giving me any money, but Coca-Cola had given me smart water, and so I was like, okay, cool. Now I can say I have Coca-Cola as a partner. So I listed them out as a partner.
Yeah.
So I then took that partnership, and then I went to IBM, I went to Dell, I went to Google, and I said, hey, look, I have Coca-Cola, I have these speakers, and then that started to turn into money, because the other sponsors don't have to know that somebody else did not pay, right? So leverage that. You have to be truthful, you know what I'm saying, and make sure that there's a trail or whatever. But I've always used those to try to turn it into something else. And so that's worked for me. I've also seen people, so there's a young lady in Detroit, Ellis Island Iced Tea. So now she is African American. She makes her own tea. She has now been on multiple TV shows. I just saw that that Kevin Hart is now a actual partner, I guess, with her. So now she's taken these wins, and then as she's continued to do it. He said, I kept seeing your name come across my radar, and so I know I had to do something with you. So it, just like in a magazine ad, you can do a magazine ad one time, probably not gonna do a whole lot for you. They tell you that you have to have it multiple times, you have to see it multiple times, right? So.
Right, and so and another thing, so many people think that they need to go outside of what's already occurring in their universe to create something, and that's a possibility. But it also sounds like, with the story that you just told us, that this woman already had those things occurring. And so rather than going out and seeking out, since it's here, let's be smart about how we utilize this resource that we have.
So you've hit a great point. So I'm sure people ask this all the time. So how do you create something that's viral, right? If we all knew how to create viral stuff, we just sit in the corner and just create viral stuff all day, right? Yes. So I tell people, make something that matters. And so when we were chronicled on CNN's Black in America 4, they ended up selecting 8 entrepreneurs like from around the nation. But what ended up happening is that I wasn't trying to pitch something national. I just was doing my thing in my city. And so I tell people, if you double down and focus on what you do, like media outlets, like their job is to they need to unearth, or they need interesting stories. And so they're looking for stuff. But the hardest part is create content and do something that's interesting. And so now there's something that people need to take notice of, and that can create opportunities for you.
Oh, I love this. So many opportunities available to all of us now. So we're coming here to the bottom of the hour. I feel like this conversation could go on for like 6 days, and someday it will.
Yeah.
So as we're wrapping up here, with the idea or the eye toward, we're going to be in this for a hot minute, meaning a long hot minute, 18, 24 months or longer. What would you leave with folks to think about and to bolster maybe their strength a little bit in the face of all of this?
So I would look at other opportunities to be able to figure out other things that can create opportunities. And so I'll give you an example. So even the glasses that I wear, I work with a company called C Eyewear. And so I have a great partnership with them. So I don't pay for glasses, nice. but I have amazing glasses. I'm doing stuff with Cadillac now. And so these are things that I didn't have the same type of partnerships prior to, but I now look at these kind of opportunities as, this is creating not only revenue, but now I have a chance to be able to, I'm spending less on products and things like that. So there's things that you can think about that might be outside of your, things that are, so maybe something that you haven't done before. And so I'll leave people with these 2 points. I want you to think about circle of competence. And Warren Buffett talked about this in 1996 during his investor meeting. He talked about operating or investing in areas that they're strong in. So I want you to think about that, but also think about reversible and irreversible decisions, right? Mm-hmm. So in terms of making decisions, and so this is one of those mental models to where if it's an irreversible decision, it takes a little more time. You need a little more detail before you make that decision. If it's reversible, you're able to follow your gut and move a little faster. And so I'm sharing that because think about that in terms of how you bucket ideas and making decisions to be able to move forward.
Oh, what a good nugget. Thank you so much for that. And Robert just typed in here, or Robe just typed in here, great conversation and insight. And they've got C Eyewear as well. So
okay, cool.
Well, Hajj, I can't thank you enough for investing part of your day with us here for the Thriving in Uncertainty conversations. How can people find you online and in other spaces?
All right, so Rebrand.City is our website. I love to connect with you in IG, and it's just my name. So it's Hajj Flemings, HajjFlemings. And those are probably 2 really good places to be able to connect with me.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Hajj. Stay safe, stay healthy. I'm cheering you on. I watch your running tweets all the time. So I'm cheering you on from a distance. And I look forward to the opportunity that I get to see you in person sometime soon.
Absolutely. Yes, yes. So I look forward to working with you, and keep going with the amazing work that you're doing. People definitely need this information for sure.
Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.
All right. Bye-bye.